You are watching and listening to Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and your favourite podcasts. Leicester Till I Die TV, your first choice for everything Leicester City. Tune in and join in now.
And now, here's your host.
Right, Chris.
All right, how the devil are we? Welcome along. This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Thank you for coming along and watching us. If you are watching us, don't forget, if you are on YouTube, press that subscribe button. Click the likes and click that notification bell. We've got a lot of off-season shows coming up, little things doing a little bit differently, following England and the Lionesses as well. Never miss a game, or never miss a show, I should say. Press that notification bell. And if you are listening on your favourite podcast platform, whether that be any of those four up there or any of the big major platforms, thank you very much for listening. And he's straight in here. Villa spending huge again to finish bottom half. Fingers crossed. Anyway, it is second in a series of reviews of the last season. And I am extremely pleased. We had Jerry Taggart in the other day. I'm extremely pleased. We've had him before. It's nice to welcome him back. Used to be the Leicester Mercury chief correspondent. Now he is Leicester City's chief correspondent at the Athletic. Good evening, Rob.
Good evening. How are you, Chris?
I'm very well, very well. Trying to get my breath back now the season is over. What a season.
I know. It seemed to go on forever, didn't it? And it was a roller coaster ride, I think I described it as. There were so many highs and lows, a lot of lows at times, but they got through it. And to finish eighth and reach the semi-final of European football as well, it's another season that I'll remember.
Exactly, and it hasn't gone as well as sort of the previous two seasons. We have to admit that. But I've just got here sort of, if we look back on it, and obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, but we're Community Shield winners, or as people that know me know, I like to call it the English Super Cup. We got to the European Conference League semi-finalists, losing to the eventual winners. And we finished in eighth, which was only one position off Europe. And for me, it's easy to look back on in hindsight, isn't it? It wasn't a total write-off of a season.
Well, absolutely. I think I wrote this myself. It was probably a season of missed opportunities when you think Europa League and some of the points they threw away. Particularly Tottenham at home. There was moments that were challenging for fans and frustrating. And I think that's why the narrative started to be that, this season was a disappointment to them, considering the highs of the previous two campaigns. But overall, I think, considering all the problems they've had with injuries and availability, and there was no consistency of selection because there was no consistency availability of players. Yes. I think they've battled through it quite well. And I think a lot of the younger lads, that like the Kieran Dewsbury Halls and the Luke Thomases and that will come through this and have a lot of experience from that they can take into future campaigns. This is still, I think it's the joint fourth highest they've ever finished in English football. So, I think in the context of Leicester City's history, it will still be a season that people will cherish and remember.
Do you think it's a case, though, we sort of touched on this before we came live, that and yes, I am calling other fans, I guess, but like Arsenal very much is like last season was like, we don't want to be in the conference because it's below us. We should be in the Champions League. And are we getting a little bit like, well, we finished eighth, but it's worse than the last two seasons?
I hope not, because there's something unique about Leicester City and the fan base. And I know expectations rise with when you have success, and you've got to continue to have success to match those expectations. But this club has come a long way in a very short space of time, and they're still developing now. And as we saw, this squad isn't strong enough to deal with the injuries they've had, with the workload they've had. They've had players that have been playing in the red zone, which is when they're on the verge of injury, so much because other players have not been able to play. And they've had to battle through this. And I think it's character building. I hope they can build on this for next season. And hopefully when they have a good summer in the transfer market, if they can, then that'll make them strong for next season. But it's getting tougher and tougher. It's a moving target to challenge for that top six. It's a moving target because they're getting richer and richer. We've seen this week Chelsea's takeovers going through. They're going to throw £200 million in their transfer kitty. Tottenham have released £150 million in their transfer kitty. Then you've got the clubs like Newcastle and Villa who have already started spending big already, who are going to go for it. And Leicester's budget is around 8th or 9th in that Premier League. So they finished 8th. So they're on par. It was a par season. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it. It was a par season.
I would totally agree. I mean, I said before, the last couple of seasons, you've had an out-of-sorts Arsenal, an out-of-sorts Spurs, and a West Ham that kind of popped up last season. There was only really Leicester in the position to challenge for that 4th, 5th sort of position. Now you've got, Arsenal back. You've got Southampton, obviously, like you say, are back, and you've got like West Ham still continuing, and the Newcastle. There's a lot more fighting for that small space that we were once in.
Absolutely, and those you need some of the big six to have a bad season, to have an off season. And Man United have had a few over the years, but now they've got a new gaffer coming in. They're going to throw money at that because whenever you get a new manager in, you always got to back him. Otherwise, what's the point of changing manager? So they're going to spend money as well. Arsenal now sense that they're turning the corner with some of their younger players with Arteta, so they're going for it. They're going to back Conte at Tottenham massively because otherwise he'll leave. So it's going to get tougher and tougher. So I just think there's a little dose of reality that needs to just be swallowed by Leicester fans for next season. But that doesn't mean they can't dream because, you can see the shirt behind me, the Champions League shirt. The dreams can come true. And if the club do the right sort of business, they can still be in the mix next season.
Yeah. I always look at, how long it took Liverpool to get back to where they are now. It took Klopp quite a few seasons. When you look at us and say, well, we've had a bad season, pound for pound, it'll sooner be us than Man United or Everton.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's been. I just think that the way they've gone about it this season, there was a lot of problems. Some of them self-inflicted. I'll probably imagine. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But some that you couldn't foresee, like Wesley Fofana's injury, the eve of the season. He's such a great player. That kid's going to go to the very, very top. Losing James just in the previous season, another quality player. The fact that he's in the England squad now says it all, that he's so versatile. There are so many good players in that squad already, but it does need a little bit of an overhaul. It has been together for a while. It needs freshening up. I just hope they have a better summer than they did last summer.
Yes, fingers crossed. Although we got Daka, so I'm not going to sort of completely complain.
Yeah, I like Daka. Yeah. I think Lookman's got something.
Yes.
Samari, I think, given time, although whether he's going to be given time, we'll see.
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now?
Vestergaard was the wrong fit from the start, and Bertrand had all his injury and COVID issues.
Don't start me on Vestergaard, will we? Otherwise, it's tell your wife you're taking up till the morning. We could be here that long. I'm not going to burst into song, but to quote a Queen song, it started out so well. We went down to Wembley as FA Cup holders. I can remember going down and playing Man United after we won the Premier League, in which I thought we played better, but we lost it. But it was a start, wasn't it? And I was there with my son. I couldn't get to the FA Cup final. I was there with my son, and it was one of those I was there moments, and I shared that with my son, seeing my team at Wembley lift a trophy.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's such a shame that Leicester fans have waited all their lives and to see their team win the FA Cup and lift that trophy, and only 4,000 fans could be there to actually witness it. I mean, I know they shared it on the TV. It's not the same. To get there in the Community Shield, I know it's not. Again, it's not the same, but it's still a moment to cherish.
Yeah.
And to beat a team like Man City. I mean, they've beaten Man City and Liverpool this season, and one of only 3 teams all season, only 2 domestically to beat Liverpool. Those are highlights to cling to. And I've done a season review that's going to be published the weekend where I've picked that out as my highlight of the whole season. It was on opening day, before the opening day of the season, to lift the Community Shield against a team like that at Wembley when fans can be there and share it. I thought that was just a magical moment, and it was just carried on from the euphoria of the previous season.
It was. Unfortunately, though, obviously, life's not all roses all the time, and I mean, we've had a bad year, and I don't like moaning about injuries and etc. But you get Klopp who moans sort of if Mo Salah breaks a nail. And have you? And then you look at what we've had, over 25 players injured at some point of the season, 9 of which were defensive, minded players. The worrying thing is, though, how many of those were not sort of, match related, if you like.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when Nigel Pearson was manager, and he used to get asked about their injury record because they had an excellent injury record. They had very rarely had soft tissue injuries. And I think I remember one journalist saying, you've been quite lucky with injuries. And he raised his eyebrows and went, lucky? And I think you need to think again, this meticulous of how they go about testing the training pitches before training to make sure they're not too hard. I mean, certain players like hard surfaces, like Jamie Vardy, the speed players like to train on a hard surface. The players that are vulnerable to injury, like a Johnny Evans, would prefer a softer surface to train on, take the pressure off. And that's the level of detail they go into.
Yeah.
And they tailor training then accordingly. And I think they're still doing that down there. But I think it's just the workload on this group. I mean, some of the injuries you just can't legislate for. I mean, Ricardo Pereira's broken leg, that was a tackle. Fofana's a tackle. There was quite a few. But then you get a situation where players are getting soft tissue injuries, and that puts pressure on the rest of the lads in the squad. And the best example I can give you is Charles Siunsu at the start of the season. I think he played something like 25 games for club and country on the trot, started every game, 90 minutes. And he was in the red zone, which is where he's liable to break down. And but they had no choice. He was the last man standing. They were putting everybody else in alongside him that could possibly play there. And eventually he pulled a hamstring, and it was inevitable. Yeah. But it's been like that all season. But I think they're still reviewing the situation in terms of the sports science down there to make sure, because that was one of his key things when he came in. Brendan Rodgers said, he gave them I think it was 5 or 6 points that he wanted for them to achieve for goals, and one of them was player availability. Yeah. They haven't had that this season, so that will be something they will have to really look deeply at.
And it was almost a case of, because he was obviously changing the formation every week. It was almost a case of he'd go in the morning and say, right, who's fit, lads? And if he had 3 defenders put his hand up, that was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
He said to us, I think he said it on record as well, but he spoke privately to us, and he said, sometimes he'd pick his team, pick his tactics, and then, the day before the game, somebody else would go down. Somebody else would have a problem, and he'd have to change everything to go into the game. So it was very hard to manage. And as I said, I think Brian English, the doctor, the club doctor that came in, I think he's leaving the end of this season. Nothing to do with that, but I think he's just moving on to his end of his contract and moving on to other things. But I think they'll be looking at how they structure that department now, moving forwards.
conspiracy theories will always abound. Of course they will. You know, we love a good conspiracy theory.
Yeah, we like to look for a smoking gun, don't we? Or a grassy knoll.
Exactly. Dave Rennie leaves. We suddenly
Dave.
seem to get loads of injuries. I mean, it's surely not related.
Well, no, yeah. Well, I think Dave's a very talented guy anyway. But I think the injury started really when we came out of COVID, the lockdown, and we started the season again, and then you started to see like Ben Chilwell and James Maddison picking up injuries, and there was quite a few that started to pick up then, and Dave was at the club then. So I think a big factor of this is the congestion of fixtures, and this has been going on since we returned from COVID. You know, they're playing twice a week, every week. And I know people say, the Championship was the same. It's on a different level. The intensity of the football is at a different level, Premier League and Europe football compared to the Championship. And, I think a lot of players the demands on them was a little bit too much. And again, I know I've seen fans on social media whenever I've said this on social media, they go, "Oh, well, I'd do that. I'd play twice a week, get paid to play twice a week." Yeah, but you're not playing to the level they're playing.
No,
you're not. The intensity is incredible, and certain players have broken down during that. And Rodgers, because of the unavailability of other players, hasn't been able to replace them. So I think COVID has had a massive part to play. And they're not the only ones. And they're not even the worst ones. You know, Leeds have had 41 injuries. I think Leicester have had 31 injuries. But that's not including Fofana. But Leeds have had 41 in the season.
Yeah. I've just noticed that Dave Rennie, of course, he has gone to Leicester B, or as it's called these
Bristol
days,
City.
Yes.
Yeah, he's doing a good job down there. And I bet they're still getting injuries down there, but Dave does a great job. He did.
Like you say, conspiracy theory. I did say I wasn't going to touch on this, but I do want to quickly, because Ant from Ant's Leicester fan channel, great Leicester channel. I believe you've been on that one as well. Do get over there, guys, and support that. He did ask, do you think Brendan is the correct man to take City forward? I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because, like I said, it is a love him, hate him sort of thing. But you've got he's only a 3-season manager. He always suffers on his 3rd season. And I always say,
let's give him a 4th.
Fourth, exactly.
Yeah, let's give him a 4th and find out.
Yes. And I think you touched on it earlier for me. And that is that I think when Brendan came in, he was brought in with a long-term project in mind. Because obviously he's good with the youth and what have you. Now, if we suddenly go, right, goodbye, Brendan, thank you very much. As you said, somebody new comes in, doesn't like the particular players that we've got in, doesn't, want to play same formations, etc. And it's almost like ripping the last 2 or 3 years up and starting from scratch.
Well, and the thing is as well, he inherited that squad. And although they've added to it with a few players over the last few transfer windows, this is his chance to shape that squad how he sees fit now. Lee Congleton's gone. That's a big concern for me because there's no head of recruitment in. Martin Glover is being held at Southampton against his will. He's he
wants to come, does he?
He's a prisoner. He wants to come. Yes.
Yeah.
He's agreed to come, but he's got to serve his notice there, and they're making sure his notice is probably the whole transfer window, which I don't think really helps them. It doesn't really help Leicester. It doesn't help Martin. So it's a bit of a negative sort of stance on that. But they've got a big job to do this summer. And I think then Brendan should be judged on that because what he's done when he come in has been fantastic. When you think, he took over from Claude Puel, he instantly got a response from him in the tail end of that season. Then to challenge in the top 4 for 2 seasons running, and then to lift the FA Cup. And that's fantastic. Yeah. And then this season, all the problems they've had, then to recover towards the end of the season has been fantastic. So I think he deserves a shot at rebuilding the squad how he sees fit, and then we'll judge him. I hope Leicester fans just say, okay, let's see what you do now, Brendan.
Yeah. Total Football, good evening, how are you? He's just said Brendan doesn't like his own signings, though, trying to move to one. But let's be honest with you, when you sign a player, yes, you've got a good idea of how he's going to be, but it doesn't always work out. I've been awful, So Alex Ferguson signed a few bad ones in his time.
Well, let me talk you through how they work in the recruitment department. They will identify areas of the squad they want to improve. So say it's a defensive midfielder. Like I'm going to use Bouba Samare as an example.
Yeah.
What they'll do then, they'll have the head of recruitment and his recruitment scouts that will scour, and they won't. And now COVID's over, they can go and actually watch players live again, which before it was all done on video. And they will scour every league trying to find a player that they think is going to fit the bill. And in Bouba's case, a number of the recruitment guys watched him, scoured him. They watched him in Ligue 1. And they thought, this guy is physically big, he's strong, he's a deep line player. He doesn't score goals, so he's not an attacking player. You know, I think he got one in his entire career. Not great. But for what they were thinking, I think they were thinking if Wilfred Ndidi moved on, this guy was going to be the sitting, holding midfield player. A hybrid between Ndidi and Tielemans in a way.
Yeah.
That was the sell. Then they go and have a meeting with Rogers, Lee Congton, and they sell this player to him. Say, look, we think this guy is going to do the business. Brendan then has to weigh up, and they'll probably have 2 or 3 options. Brendan will weigh up, and he'll give the green light. So, okay, I think if you think he is, let's have him in. And then when he starts to work with him, that's when Brendan makes his real judgment on it. I know it sounds strange because it's expensive risk, but all transfers are a risk, and there's never any guarantees. And I think what he's seen this season is that Bouba Samare has struggled to make the transition from Ligue 1, where the game is slower, you know, it's more tactical. He can sit deep. He's got time on the ball. He's got no time on the ball in the Premier League. And suddenly, you know, I did an interview with him, and he said, you know, the one thing I've learned about the Premier League is you got to run harder. He said, I've always ran, but I've got to run harder here. And when I said that to Brendan said, well, I'm glad that's the penny dropping, hopefully, that he's got to work harder because you've got to run. You need intensity. So, you know, he struggled this season to do that. But that's an example of how they work. So not all of them will be the right fit. Sometimes, like Yannick Vestergaard, is a player that's been on Brendan's radar for a while, and he thinks he's going to do the job, and he hasn't. But I think he's the wrong fit as well. Yeah. I think he's the wrong fit. At the start, I thought he was the wrong fit. I thought he was the wrong fit. He's probably a more Claudio Ranieri defender from 2016 than, you know, when Leicester was sitting deep, like Robert Huth, heading and kicking and challenging. And Brendan likes the defence to play high up the pitch, to engage him with midfielders, to nip the ball like Fofana, to nip in and nip the ball off them and play, and then be able to defend space and have pace to run in behind if somebody gets in behind. That's not Yannick Vestergaard's game. It's totally. He's not. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's just not the right fit. I mean, the Danes love him. They think he's a great defender.
When I actually did a transfer special on both Ryan Bertrand and Yannick Vestergaard with Southampton YouTube side. Let me just say, they were probably they were kind of pocketing the money and going, goodbye, thank you, we're off, sort of thing, which kind of worried me from the start. But, I mean, just with Samari, first of all, I mean, you know, you get players like Fofana that, you know, you pluck from another league, they come in and they just settle like they've been here forever and a day. But that is the exception, I think, isn't it, rather than the rule? And maybe Samare, if he's given a little... I mean, I don't think Soyuncu was particularly brilliant in his first season, and it took him that season behind Maguire to get used to it. And maybe the same with Soyuncu.
Fofana is exceptional.
With Samare, sorry.
Yeah, Fofana is exceptional. He come in and he just hit the ground running because he is a top talent. He will go right to the very, very top. I mean, I'm talking Real Madrid, Barcelona, you know, the very, very top. I think with Samare and Patson Daka to an extent as well, it's an adjustment. It's different to anything, and they're young. So you've got to give them a bit of time. You've got to have a bit of patience with them. Whether Brendan's now seen enough of Samari and thinks, no, he won't cut the mustard in the Premier League. He's a continental player, and that's where he should forge his career. Time will tell. You know, we've had conversations with him, and you know, he just wants him to up the intensity really and the pace of his game. Patson Daka, I think, he's got potential if you give him time. But these young players, you have to give them the time. I mean, And if you want players to come in and hit the ground running, Fofana the exception, you're going to have to pay 50, 60 million pounds for players. Unless they aren't in that bracket. They're not in that market. No. They're in the market 20, 30 million pound players. That's where they'll be this summer as well, as long as they can move a few players on.
Yeah. It brings us on to what I wanted to talk about the defence. And obviously, we were talking about Vestergaard there. Vestergaard, it was almost like a panic buy, but I think you said that was a Rodgers signing, not a club signing. And I think that they've actually gone back now, haven't they, to going back to sort of the club maybe having more of a leading role in who they pick. I mean, I don't suppose he would, Brendan thought he would be having to play him as much as he did. And in fairness to him, he had to be introduced to his fellow defenders before every game because it was different and he probably hadn't even met them.
Yeah, I have got some sympathy for Vestergaard. He was signed simply because Fofana got injured. Now, Brendan might have tried to sign him 18 months before. I mean, his people tell me that Brendan's always liked him. Yeah. But when he came in off the back of the Euros. He'd had no pre-season at all. Injuries had decimated Brendan's defensive options, so he had to come in and play from the offset. But I think Brendan has admitted as well that he was really only ever going to be a backup. Fofana and Evans were his main two, and he didn't have them at the start of the season. So Vestergaard had to play undercooked from the start. And as I said, I don't think his natural game suits that. But we did see glimpses of Vestergaard, how good he could be in a certain type of team. When their backs against the wall, when they're defending deep. Man City at home, I thought he was excellent. When he came in, he was heading, clearing everything from his box. He is a head on the stick, really. Like, he can play, he can pass the ball, but, he's a good defender. And then when he come on Stade Rennes, in the closing stages when they were holding out, he was excellent then as well. So that's
exactly. Yeah.
He can't play high up the pitch and have all that space in behind him, because we saw in the Euros when England played Denmark and Harry Kane ran him. Harry Kane's not the fastest forward in the world, but he ran him ragged. So we knew that if he's exposed in space, he's vulnerable. If he's sitting deep, he's a good defender.
Yeah. Yes. Two things that have annoyed me this season. I'll come to my first big annoyance first. Playing out from the back. It absolutely drives me bonkers.
Get it forwards. Compete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're not, Man City, Liverpool. We've got those sort of players. And we've lost so many goals this season where we've lost the ball within our own, half. And I know, is it because Schmeichel, when he kicks it up 9 times out of 10, it goes out of play? Is that why Brendan's trying to get us to play out from the back, or is it just this thing? Because it's driving me mad.
Well, the reason he does it, and the reason most sides do it now, Leicester aren't unique, is because we've got a trend. Football goes through fashions, and we've got a trend at the moment of the high press, the Gegen press. Jurgen Klopp uses it at Liverpool, Pep Guardiola uses it at Man City, and they've got the players to do it. And when they're fit, Leicester have actually got some good players that can do it as well. And what they're trying to do is spread the ball out and play into Tielemans, and then play triangles and beat the press. And once they got past the press, it's almost like they're on the counter attack. Then there's open spaces for the likes of James Maddison. The problem they've had is when teams have twigged them, sat deep and not pressed. Suddenly, it doesn't work then, because who's to play around? They're not coming to the ball. And I think a classic example was Roma and Jose Mourinho. The way he nullified what Leicester were trying to do to try and create that open space to beat the initial press was he had Pellegrini sit on Tielemans. So as soon as, because he plays the little triangles, he links with the two centre-backs, he links with the full-backs. And what he did was sit on them so that he wasn't an option for them to pass to. So therefore, there was no other option for them to pass to. But to try and play long or play wide or go back to Kasper, which they invariably did. And then Kasper was trying to ping balls out. But as soon as they got the ball back, Roma, which they inevitably did, Pellegrini was then running past Tielemans. He was too powerful. Tielemans is a good player, great playmaker, great. He plays passes that nobody else in that team can play, but he's not a powerful player. He's not a powerhouse.
No.
Pellegrini was then running at the back four and causing problems. So that was the problem Leicester had this season. How, when teams aren't coming at you and pressing you that you were expecting to press, then how do you beat them? Because they were struggling then because you want space, open space for the likes of Harvey Barnes and Lookman and Jamie Vardy and Kieran Dewsbury Hall. They want open space, but there wasn't any.
I listened to one match and it stuck in my mind. I'm not sure who it was, but the actual commentary stuck in my mind when I was watching it. And the opposition had got a corner, and you know what's going to be coming here now. And they said, "Oh, it's a corner against Leicester City. That's almost as good for them as giving them a goal." And
giving them a penalty,
Well, the goal, the word had not finished leaving his mouth, and the ball was in the back of the net. Yeah. I mean, the zonal marking and corners, it has been a problem, and I know Torre's been taking a lot of stick, and whether it is or not, I don't know, but it seemed to take a hell of a while to sort that out.
It's been going on longer than this season. I did a piece with Bruno Berner for the Athletic last season, looking at the number of goals they were conceding from set pieces. And Bruno basically said, look, you can have all the systems in the world you want. You can have zonal marking, man marking, a mixture of zonal and man marking. If you don't take individual responsibility to attack the ball, then you're going to concede. And also, you've got a goalkeeper that's not comfortable coming off his line and dominating his 6-yard box. Now, I think in normal circumstances, that's not a problem because all the defenders know. It's when you've got a keeper that sometimes comes, doesn't come, that creates uncertainty. Kasper doesn't come. Yeah. He's not comfortable in that situation. He never has been. It's not a new thing. That's part of his game. But when you lose the profile of players like Johnny Evans and Fofana and then Wilfred Ndidi, obviously you're having mismatches. And at the start of the season, they had this system where they had a zonal across the 6-yard box with Jamie Vardy on the front post. And you'd have all your big jumpers, your Siunsus, your Martis, zonal. But then you'd have their 3 biggest jumpers. So say that's Liverpool and you've got Van Dijk, you got Matip and Fabinho on the penalty spot, being marked by Harvey Barnes, Yuri Tielemans, and Jose Perez. They're mismatches. They're getting runs on them.
Yeah.
And we saw it. I mean, Rudiger for Chelsea, near post. Nobody on the back post, near post header, into the back post. And I think there were several others that were very similar to that. And then he changed it to man marking. He went back to basics and had people on the post. But they were still getting beaten by these mismatches. And I think that's something he wants to address in the summer. He's looking at a centre-back. He needs another centre-back to come in, a left-sided centre-back, somebody with a physical presence that can, if you've got Evans, Fofana and a left-sided centre-back, you've got 3 and Wilfred Ndidi, you've got 4 big lads in there that can defend those situations because they're not a big team, Leicester.
No. And we'll come on, because I want to ask you about one in particular, but we'll come on to that sort of when we touch on transfers later. Having won the FA Cup, we started out on our defence of the FA Cup. Didn't last very long. And we've got the pleasure of probably having to play them again next season if they get past Huddersfield. I don't know whether you're, let's get Nottingham Forest up and have a couple of local derbies, or no, let them suffer another season at least in the second tier. I'm very much of the second opinion. But Watford we played in the third round, which was in the middle of all the COVID crisis, and Brendan put out, well, you can see there a lot of youngsters, and at the end, there was 5 or so on the pitch, youngsters, because you were able to do that in the FA Cup. In the next round against Forest, biggest derby, it's the only derby we're going to have. So we did have for 30 odd years. We got absolutely overrun and outplayed by a championship team. Do you think, we have these foreign players, and I'm not against them. They bring absolutely flair and great, players to the Premier League. But do you think sometimes they don't get the sort of the local derbies? Because surely they have those in places where they've come from.
Yeah, no, I think they do get it. I mean, I certainly think people around the club would have reminded them of how much it meant. But I just think it was just a terrible day. I mean, I talked about the Community Shield being the highlight, and it never got any better than that all season. I know Eindhoven came close, but that was the lowest point. That was rock bottom of the season, coming away from the City Ground and having witnessed that, because it was surrender. It was meek. It was the white flag, and I think that was the moment when Brendan had enough with certain individuals. He didn't sugarcoat it at all. He didn't defend them. He hung them out to dry, effectively.
Yeah.
I think it was, he'd had enough. I mean, then there was the Tottenham game, and I think that was when he come out and said, perhaps we've reached the pinnacle. Perhaps some of these players have gone as far as they can with us. Perhaps we need a refresh. That was the moment when he thought, right, something needs to change, because we can't have those sort of performances, because it just wasn't acceptable. It was powder puff performance, and that wasn't just the foreign lads. That was the rest of the side.
It was all.
The lads that should have known what it meant. I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah. And funny enough, I did a watch along for that game with Steve Lynix, who, of course, you will remember. And he was sort of ahead of me by about 2 or 3 minutes, because you can never get the streams matching up. And I mean, he sort of said, "No, I won't say anything. I'll wait until until you caught up, and I'll see your reaction." That didn't last long. I mean, every goal that was going in, bless him, his language was getting bluer and bluer as it went along, and it was just probably the most depressing 90 minutes, certainly of this season. But, probably of many seasons as well. I mean, considering the context of it, who it's against, defending champions of the FA Cup, and you go to your bitter local rivals and produce a performance like that. That's why I say it was the lowest point of the campaign. I mean, the fans deserve better than that, and I think the players would have acknowledged that as well. Sometimes these performances come from nowhere; they come out of the blue, and you think, "Well, what on earth was that all about?" It was very hard to get your head around, to be honest. Watching it's easy now, isn't it, at the end of the season to look back and go, "Look, yeah, we all have a bad day at the office every now and again, and we do. Let's be honest." But it's still hard to take when it was Nottingham Forest.
Oh, absolutely. When it means so much to you, when you have to go into your workplace and face fans from Nottingham Forest, and and you've got to suffer that, the bragging rights and the banter and that. It's hard, because the players don't have to go into their workplace and face Nottingham Forest fans.
No,
the fans do. Yeah, the fans do.
Exactly. Talk, good evening. As always, I always say if Talk pops in, his details are in the description below, but he does have a new channel out, both on Twitter and on YouTube, and that is Football versus Cancer. I always get it wrong. You're going to have to rename your channel, Talk. I always get it the wrong way around. Football versus Cancer. And it's all about, acknowledging and searching and reporting anything that you discover. It's a great channel. It's all about charity. You can probably tell from the MU which team he supports, but he does a lot of just general football as well. And it's all for the charity. So get over there, guys, and give him some support. Europe was a bit of an up and down season. We got into the Europa League, which was the first disappointment in itself. We then probably got the hardest group that we've had in recent years in Europe. I mean, let's be honest with you, in the Champions League, we couldn't really probably picked a better group ourselves. And then last season in the Europa League but we've got some real big hitters in this. On that last day, I mean, it started again bursting into song, but it started off so well. They said we made the perfect pair, and then after that, I am lost. But 2-2 against Napoli, and a game that we thought we might not win. But again, it was so up and down, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, you're right. There was some challenging fixtures in there, certainly on the road. Naples at the end, though. This is when I talk about missed opportunities. When they went there, and I know they got the early goal. I mean, the fans were treated abysmally out there, by the way. They were taken all around the Wrekin, all the way around the outside of Naples, past the airport again to get in, when it was only an 8-mile drive around the coast. to get to the stadium. So the most of them missed half the game, and they'd travelled all that way through all those COVID situations with forms and tests and everything to be there, and they couldn't be there. I mean, but that's the talk about the game. They recovered from an early setback. They covered really, really well, and I thought they could do this. I mean, it was a terrible, horrendously wet night, and I thought perfect English conditions for them, but they just let it go again towards the end, and that's what I mean about missed opportunities. That was a great chance to finish top of the group, and they ended up finishing third. And even then, there was the situation where Walsall could have scored a 94th minute penalty or whatever to snatch a point against Moscow, and that would have put Leicester through again. It just seemed like it wasn't meant to be, but I think they have to look at like the home game against Napoli as well. They could have. Yeah, they could have done better in the home game. Yeah. But then the Conference League, people, I mean, I was there in that room when Brendan was asked about the Conference League, and he said, "Oh, well, I don't really know anything about it." And that's been thrown back at him constantly since. But none of us really did. Nobody did. It's the debut season, but it turned out to be a wonderful thing, didn't it?
Exactly. And I'm not a huge fan of clubs that fail in one competition being allowed a second bite of the cherry in the competition below. I think when Man United went to penalties against Villarreal, if they'd have won that Europa League because they'd failed in the Champions League, I think it's a bit of a farce. But it is what it is. We were down there. I mean, I know a lot of fans were saying, "Oh, we should have, if we'd been Napoli, we'd have got Barcelona, we'd have played them for 2 games." But with the season as it was, we'd have probably ended up going out, I think, anyway. But we had a great run. And at the end of the day, it was a European semi-final. And I'll tell you something, I reckon there's 15 probable clubs in that Premier League that would have swapped places with us.
Well, absolutely. I mean, every Leicester fan, that's only the 6th campaign that Leicester have been in a European competition. And you've got to savour these moments. You don't know when they're going to come around. As I said, it's getting more and more competitive in the Premier League. But how often will Leicester fans ever get a chance to go to Randers? How many Leicester fans could pick out Rennes on a map? But they went there and they had some great times. And then Eindhoven, that was, amazing that the performance. But when you looked at
the quarterfinal, I think it was the quarterfinals. There was, apart from Blod-Glimt, there was 7 teams in there that in their recent history had been Champions League teams.
Yes. There was some top quality teams in there and clubs with great history. I wouldn't mind going to Glimt either. Norway. I've never been to Norway, but we got Roma. They got the tough draw. To have to deal with Roma, and again there was opportunities at home to get an advantage to take over there because it was always going to be tough over there. And then the atmosphere inside that ground was incredible. Stadio Olimpico. What a historic ground that was. Oh, it is. Sorry. But but we knew what was going to come. You had to be resilient. You had to be strong. They conceded a soft goal from a set piece, and there was hardly any football played after that. It was a Mourinho masterclass. But what will stay with me is just the atmosphere, and the Leicester fans contributed to that as well. So there's still fantastic memories to take away, even from a disappointment like that.
And let's face it, he did much the same last night, didn't he? Got the 1 goal.
I think I tweeted the same thing. This has got a familiar feel. That as soon as they went a goal up, it was like, wow, we'll just break the game up. There would be no flow to it. It won't be very entertaining, and it wasn't. And that's what they did to Leicester, and Leicester couldn't break them down.
Yeah. I must admit, having been to Norway myself, I didn't fancy Blod-Glimt because they'd put 6 past Roma when they played them. They'd already beaten them then at their place in the quarterfinals. It's one of those plastic pitches. Do you remember them?
Yeah. Yes.
And it would have been freezing. So we were on a hiding to nothing. But hey, like I say, semi-final, we got knocked out by the eventual winners.
Hey, Chris, we would be freezing rock hard pitches. Barnsley away on a Tuesday night. We're used to this. That would have been a problem. That would have been a problem.
We'll never know, though. We'll never know. Steve's just asked a question here, and we're going to come on to look at transfers very, very briefly. I mean, for me, I don't like the goalkeeper as a captain. Not that there's anything wrong with Casper. It's just I don't think he can get his message out up the other end of the pitch when you're a goalkeeper. I much prefer a midfielder. Your thoughts on that particular topic?
I have no problem with Casper being the captain at all. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in all the grounds when none of the fans were in there.
Yeah.
And the only voice you could hear was Casper's constantly.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the things he said to the referees, I won't repeat any of them. But, he was on their case constantly. And you look through history, I mean, there's been some great captains that have been goalkeepers. Dino Zoff, I mean, the Italians still. I mean, Iker Casillas as well. I don't think there's a real issue. But I understand what you're saying. You want somebody who's in the thick of it, that can get in the referee's ear from close up. You want somebody who, because they do get intimidated.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is an argument there. And I think Kieran Dewsbury-Hall is a future Leicester captain. England captain, I was going to say. That's getting ahead of myself. No, but I don't have any issue with Casper being the skipper at the moment. I think there's a lot being thrown at him at the moment, which I think is a little bit unfair.
Yeah. Just briefly touching on sort of transfers, it's not really the window obviously isn't open yet. We know Tielemans is going. Well,
is he, Chris?
But if he doesn't, we're not going to get any money for him, are we?
Well, you can only sell somebody if somebody's in for him. I know Arsenal are interested, so there's a good chance. Their priority is a striker. But I think the whole of the Premier League has known for the last 3 transfer windows that Tielemans has been available because that contract's been on the table and he's not signed it. So there's a chance they could go, and nobody is coming for him. Nobody. All the speculation about Liverpool, Man United, not it's come to nothing. In fact, from our sources at the Athletic, through my Liverpool counterparts, Liverpool was saying that he's not ready for them. So that's a non-starter. But obviously, the rumor mill always turns in the transfer window. Arsenal are interested in him. They are interested in him, but the priority is to get a striker in. How successful they are with that could dictate whether they make a move for Yuri.
All I will say is I will give Tielemans 40 million if he doesn't go to Arsenal. Please, last season we had every Arsenal fan wetting themselves over the prospect of getting Maddison, which of course we all know was never a goer. If they get Tielemans, we'll never hear the end of it. But he wants, as I thought, a big club, and joking aside, all right, maybe you could say Arsenal are, but does he not want Champions League football, which Arsenal, let's be honest with you, can't give him?
Yes, he does. Is the short answer, but he wants to stay in the Premier League, and he wants to play for a big and he wants to play for a Big Six club, and Arsenal are that. So I can see it would be appealing for him, and they can still offer him European football with the prospects of perhaps challenging for top 4 in a Champions League in the future. I can see why that would be tempting for him. It's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? Some players, look, Jamie Vardy turned them down. He was on the cusp of joining Arsenal and he changed his mind. He wanted to stay. Yuri's a very ambitious guy and he probably thinks he's achieved as much as he possibly can with Leicester. He's got a year left on his contract. I think if nothing happens this summer, he'll just run his contract down. I don't think he will ever sign that contract.
No. I mean, would it be, and I know that I'm sort of living in Disney World Fantasyland here, but if he's not going, just sign us up a contract so that we get some money for you.
Well, this is the thing now, and I don't know how many fans know this about Harry Maguire, and he gets a load of stick from Leicester fans. But he knew Man United were in for him. They came in for him after the World Cup when he had a great World Cup.
Yeah.
And he was interested. Who wouldn't be? Manchester United are in for you. But they offered him a new contract, and he signed that. Now, okay, he gets signing on bonus and he's increasing wages. But also that would diminish his opportunity to go in Man United. That might have deterred Man United. But he took that risk because, and I know this for a fact, he had a sense of gratitude towards Leicester. When he went down with Hull, they came in. They were the ones that came in and gave him another chance in the Premier League. And he took that chance. I think Harry Maguire deserves a lot more credit from Leicester fans than he gets.
In fact, I've got to be honest with you, fair dues to the guy. I didn't know
he
that.
protected Leicester. He protected Leicester by signing that contract, and that's why they could get £80 million for him.
Wow. Credit to the guy. I didn't know that.
I don't think many Leicester fans do. I've written it a few times, but I don't think they do.
They need to go and subscribe to the Athletic. That's what they need to do and keep up with you. And so, I mean, we know we've got to sell players, don't we, to bring sort of people in. And as you said earlier, we're not in the market for the 60, 70 millions. We'll probably even struggle now for like a Yuri at 40 million. But we do know there's going to be an overhaul. Just a couple of players here. I mean, Chowdhury, I didn't like Chowdhury, but he seemed to get that potential red card taken out of him. You know, every time he went on, you thought, was he going to get sent off? That seemed to go. Brendan was really impressed with him, and as was I when he played against Liverpool in that, the home game. And then he's kind of gone off the radar totally.
Yeah, it's interesting with Hamza. I mean, obviously there's players ahead of him in that position, the defensive midfield position. But the way he performed at centre back, the Mascherano that he was dubbed by Brendan. But I think for his career, he probably will need to move on. Yeah. There's a number of them. They do need to clear out certain players that aren't featuring, the fringe players. I mean, Jose Perez showed in the last game. You
were reading my mind then. You know that was going to be the next one.
Perez, but I think that he probably will need to move on. He's not dynamic enough for Brendan. He doesn't run enough. But he's got something, but he just doesn't produce it on a consistent enough basis. And I think Newcastle fans said this as well when Leicester signed him. He's hot and cold. He'll have streaks during the season. And he took those goals superbly well on the final day of the season. But he'll probably go. I mean, they're open.
There's a player in there, but just probably not one that Brendan.
It's not consistent enough.
There.
Yeah, it's not consistent enough.
No.
And he's had a great opportunity. He's not getting any younger either. He should be in the prime of his career, but he's not performing. But Mendy, how many times? I mean, I wrote a column, never write off Nepal as Mendy, but
no.
and because he was out of the squad at the time, then he come back after the AFCON and became a key player with Wilfred Ndidi injured. But I think
I'm just crossing all these names that I've got written down off because I was going to ask you about him.
Who else?
Papa Mendy. I absolutely love him. He's taken being left out of the squad for whatever reasons, and we know there was reasons in there that weren't necessarily playing. It was the numbers that you had to balance up. He didn't complain. He wasn't off shouting to the newspapers, demanding a move, whatever. He was then brought back into the Premier League squad, thankfully, because, indeed he got injured. I'd love him to stay.
Would you like him to stay? He's a good backup to Ndidi, but I think Leicester need to bring in some fresh blood now. That squad needs revitalising, really. I mean, if they can find a buyer for him, he's got a year to go on his contract. I think they probably need to look at some different options.
I think we've got to start realising, like you said, there's a year we win. How much did we lose on Slimani? We can't. We're not a club that can afford to lose money.
Sorry, Chris. If you look back on Leicester's recruitment has been fantastic. It's one of the secrets of their success. But there's been some misses there. There's been some big misses there. Slimani is one of them. I mean, that summer of 2016, Hernandez came in, Musa came in, Mendy came in, Slimani came in. Ron Robert Ziegler came in. There are not many that worked from that summer.
No.
And I felt like last summer, Patson Daka, Lukeman, we'll see in time. But besides that, it was probably another disappointing summer, and they can't afford that this time. They've got to get it right this summer. Otherwise, they will fall behind the rest. The chasing pack are gathering pace.
Exactly. Like we said before, there's more teams going for that sort of all that, like trying to get through that one door at the same time.
Yeah.
I think with Mendy, I did like. I mean, he was the most expensive player for a while when we bought him, but I just like him, but whether we would be happy as a backup player, that's the thing, because obviously, indeed, he is always going to be the number one choice, rightly so. Yeah, I mean, Lookman, we mentioned there, so players that are coming in. I mean, Under didn't work out. Lookman, he can play right or left. Fulham absolutely loved him. He was online to be the fans' player of the season until he got injured. Then it didn't work out for him at Fulham. He has, he can change games and he excites the crowd when he comes on.
But I think Brendan sees him more now as a left-sided player to challenge Harvey Barnes, to push Harvey Barnes. That is where Ademola Lookman's role will be.
That's his preferred side, isn't it?
It won't be on the right. No. They're looking for a left-footed, right-sided player. They haven't had one that's worked since Riyad Mahrez.
No.
I mean, Rishi Gazelle, Cengiz Under, they haven't had one, and they're still looking. So perhaps Madueke could possibly be that if they fancy that, going in for that. But they do need a left-footed, right-sided winger. Because, I mean, James Maddison's played there a little bit. He's also played as an 8. But I think there's just more balance to the side when you've got 2 out-and-out wide players.
It is, and I mean, like I say, centre-back we're looking for, left-footed, right side midfielder. I think the striker role, Daka's going to be given time. Inacho, I mean, I just feel so sorry for the guy. Top scorer last season, came in, worked so well when him and Vardy were up front, and he's back to how he was before. Do you see him asking for a move? Because he's kind of, I could say, been bypassed, hasn't he?
Well, he is better in the front 2. There's no question.
Yeah.
And he's better as the second striker. Again, I've done a feature on this in the Athletic when I spoke to his Nigerian under-17s coach, and he was saying that to me. He said he's a 10. He plays off a striker. He's he's got great ability with the ball. He can hold the ball up, but he's not a 9. And we've seen the best of Iheanacho when he is a withdrawn striker, second striker behind Vardy. And that's when he comes into his own. When we've seen him this season, he's been asked to play up top on his own invariably. And then we've seen him a little bit with Daka or with Vardy. But you've got to strike up an understanding you've got to have a run in the team with another striker. So I feel a bit for Kelechi because he is a good player. He's the sort of player you look at and you think, well, what's he offering at the moment? Then suddenly he'll produce something. You'll go, wow. He'll strike one from 20 yards, or he'll beat 2 players and put one in the bottom corner. He's that sort of player. And so he does at the moment. The system that Brendan wants to play doesn't really suit him. He's better in a side with a back 3, and he's the second striker off a main striker. And he certainly has been better off. But then again, if you play that system, where's James Maddison best at? I think he's best as a 10. He's not a goal-scoring 10 like Iheanacho, though. He's a different type of 10. He's a creative 10. You could play him as an 8, I suppose. But, I mean, he's had a wonderful season.
Yeah. I hope he stays. But with everything, time will tell. A couple of names that are being thrown in here. I think you may have mentioned this one. Vardy, possibly. And I can never pronounce this one. De Kelterer.
Oh, yeah. They will be on the radar. They will certainly be. I mean, what they do is they'll have a short list for each position that's identified. And as I said, a left-sided centre-back, a left-footed right-sided player, a couple of midfield players, goals from midfield. They need more goals from midfield. As I said, Maddison's had a fantastic season. Tidham's weighed in with 7. I think Dewsbury Hall's got 3. Ndidi got 2. They need more goals from midfield. They're too reliant on Jamie Vardy. I mean, if you look at Jamie Vardy's stats for the season, when he's available, the goals he scored, the ratio to minutes, it is up there. I mean, in fact, I think nobody can beat his goals per minutes ratio in the Premier League this season. And his conversion rate is only beaten by Son. So, he is... he's still, at his age, remarkable, 35. He is still worth another contract and still a couple of years.
I said this here. if you are ever asked what has been the best signing of modern day football, look no further than Jamie Vardy, and I stand by me saying that. I think for what you get out of, and it took him a while. It took him a while to settle in as well.
Great example, because that first season, he had doubts about himself. He went to Nigel and shaky and said, I can't do this. I want to go back to Fleetwood. I don't think I'm good enough for this level. And they convinced him to stick with it and to work harder. I have to say, a big thing, I know this is very controversial, but a big thing for him was meeting Becky, because he just had a focus after that, because she settled him down. She, whatever you think of her in the public perception, she loves him, and she sorts him out and keeps him on the straight and narrow. And
you could say the same with Maddison since he's become a dad, couldn't you?
Exactly. And I said this as well about the perception about Southgate and why he's not getting picked for England. This party boy reputation hanging around with Grealish, Chilwell, and Ross Barkley and all this. Since he settled down and become a father, that's gone. I'm sure he still enjoys a good time, but he's very much focused on his football. And you saw that in the second half of the season, how focused. I mean, you can't perform like that on a consistent basis in a team that is inconsistent, with inconsistent teammates around you, unless you're totally and utterly focused on what you're doing. And Maddison's really come to the fore the second half of the season. He's been phenomenal, and I think it's a travesty that he's not got in the England squad.
Well, it's you could almost think that this show has been rehearsed, because that was my final question before we let you go. But England, James Justin, great news. He's in. He deserves it. I think he was on the verge before he got injured. And the funny thing is, not just from Leicester fans, but from, because Leicester fans are always going to moan if a Leicester player is left out. Of course we are. But from fans of other clubs as well, they can't believe that Maddison has been let out. Now, I know left out, I should say. I know Grealish has never let Southgate down, but on pure form, which I always thought Southgate had said that's what he was going to base it on, Maddison is way ahead of him.
Well, you look at the stats this season. I mean, 18 goals and 12 assists. Jared Bowen's got 18 goals and 13 assists in all competitions. His stats are right up there, but he seems to be overlooked. I don't know whether it's a bit of history or whatever. Southgate says it's because of the competition and the players that are ahead of him. I mean, and that's the thing. The Mason Mount and the Phil Fodens are probably edged ahead of him. Probably because of the clubs they play for and the opportunities they get in those sides to play at a top level. But also, I mean, when James had these issues previously, dropping out the squad and going to the casino and things like that, and the Partygate thing before West Ham. So that wouldn't have sat well with Southgate, so he probably edged them ahead of him. But since then, he's grown a lot more. He's developed a lot more. And I just find it strange that there isn't a place for him in that squad, because he can offer more than them in terms of his versatility. I mean, people say he can't. Well, England don't play with a 10. Maddison's a 10. Well, Leicester don't really play with a 10 very often. He plays as an 8. He plays wide on the right. He can play anywhere. He's a talented footballer. And he's in form as well. And Southgate always said he would pick players on form. Well, he's in the form of his life and he still can't get picked. So you have to wonder what more he can possibly do.
I think if he's got any sense, he's currently looking through his ancestry to see if he's got any Irish, Scottish, or Welsh.
He has. He's got Irish in him, but he's already.
Has he got Irish in him? Well, come on. Let's not let that could happen. And I promise you, I decided this is the last question, because I meant to ask this and I'd forgotten, because I would love to see this player at Leicester. I think once Johnny Evans, who is very much. He is the sort of the voice in that defence, isn't he? He's the experienced voice. He's been there, seen it, got the T-shirt, as we know. And Tarkowski, he's got the experience as well. I know that they've obviously got relegated, but he's out of contract. I know there's a couple of clubs looking at him. Is there any chance? Is he somebody that we would look at, or is he not on our radar, or is there a good chance we might get him? Do you think?
They've been consistently looking at James Tarkowski for the last couple of years. It seems he's like the perennial. I mean, Burnley just played hardball all the way through, and they were asking ridiculous money. And you're right; they wanted to bring him in before. Look, there's a lot. He's a free agent now, so there's going to be a lot of clubs looking at him. Whether they, I mean. Yeah, so he's a free agent. So, I mean, the conversations I've had previously, when he wasn't a free agent, they were saying, look, he's probably the wrong side of the age that they look at now. I mean, Johnny Evans is going to get another year at least. You know, he's that important. He's a vocal guy. I mean, you can see when he plays, Sunchu's a better player. I mean, we've seen the best of Sunchu alongside Johnny Evans. Fafana's a better player. Yeah. He has that influence around other people around him. James Justin, he's a guide to him. So he's an important player. Tarkowski, I'm sure they will be interested in him, but it's just that Tarkowski's got his freedom now. He can pick whatever he wants. So they'll be in the mix, but whether they can convince him to come to Leicester, I hope they can.
Yeah, no, I do as well, and that's something to do with the fact that I lived in Burnley for 20 years. I just do rate him, but Villa, Newcastle, the list is endless with the links.
They can offer more money. They can offer more money wages.
Yeah, exactly. Rob, I really appreciate you giving your time up and doing this. We mentioned it earlier, obviously, chief writer for Leicester for the Athletic. You did mention you've got a special coming up on, is it a season review?
Yeah, season review at the weekend, and we've got loads more as well. I'm doing a deep dive on James Maddison's career, speaking to people that have played with him and coached him all the way through, and as well. And there's lots more stuff we'll be doing throughout the summer on Leicester City as well. It doesn't stop.
It does. It's probably busier during the off season.
It is all transfer stuff. Yeah, I mean, as soon as something concrete happens. I mean, I know there's always a lot of speculation in the media about which players they might be interested in. A lot of it's nonsense, but when something actually happens, hopefully we'll be on top of it.
Fingers crossed. Rob, as always, sir, you're a gentleman. Thank you so much for giving up your personal time and doing this. I really do appreciate it. And if anybody's not subscribed to The Athletic yet, go and do so. It's a great read, and Rob does some amazingly interesting. I get all my information there. Did I say that out loud? Rob,
good. That's what it's there for.
Exactly. Thank you so much, mate. All the best to you and your family. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did I really say that out loud? I'm sure I don't mean to. Thanks to Rob. Great guy. Thanks for coming on. We're going to be back at 9 for Sloppy Seconds, when we'll be looking back at start of the season, we had a fan from every club come on and predict where his team were going to finish. It was interesting looking back at it, let me tell you that. That's coming up at 9 o'clock, same channel. Don't touch that dial, as they say. Thanks for watching. If you have, please, can you... Steve saying here, thanks to Rob for his time, and the same with Scott as well. Please subscribe, as Scott says there, on YouTube, and if you've been listening on your favourite podcast platform, thank you very much. I will see you back at 9 o'clock. Good night.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye, and see you next time.
Since November, well, I've been having a ball, dreaming city. Biggest prize of all, for relegation, then the capital C. But book your reservation, because you're gonna see.
That's all, folks.
Leicester till you die.
Some Stigler on the pitch, they think it's all over.
It is now